I admit, when I heard there was going to be a Terminator anime, I was cautiously optimistic and even a little bit excited. I mean, the Japanese are good at making cyberpunk stuff that fits very well in with Terminator, stuff like Ghost in the Shell. Also, you could argue Terminator maybe has a little bit of a mecha aspect to it and like a sci fi horror aspect to it. All of these are things that the Japanese are good at doing. I mean, case in point, most of the Animatrix short films were quite good. So I thought it would be interesting to kind of see what a Japanese take on the Terminator franchise would be. If nothing else, it couldn't be as bad as Terminator Dark Fate, which is honestly one of the worst movies I've ever seen, and Terminator Salvation, that I would also put up there as one of the worst movies I've seen, as both of them physically assault your senses in the most abrasive way possible. So it had to be better than that. So I was like, you know what? Maybe this is going to be okay. Maybe this could even be good. I wasn't expecting a masterpiece, but I thought we might get a fun little twist on Terminator. However, this thing was doomed from the get go because it was made by Netflix. Now, sometimes Netflix produces good things, sometimes it doesn't. It's very hit or miss. Anytime, though, they're producing something that has a political, moral, or spiritual issue to it, it's generally speaking not going to end well. And the funny thing is, going into this, I didn't even really realize that Netflix had produced it. I just heard there was going to be a Terminator anime. I just kind of obtained it and I started watching it. And almost immediately, I'm like, why is the main character black if this takes place in Japan? And like, why does this revolve around humanity being evil and we're the real monsters and just all this other stuff? Why is there just random, really explicit swearing for no reason inserted? This whole thing just feels really strange. It almost feels like Netflix made it. And the guy I was watching it with is like, no, Netflix did make it. And I'm like, okay, that explains a lot. And then I looked into it and it's like, oh, okay, no, it wasn't actually written by a Japanese person. It was written by some Romanian guy. And then suddenly just about everything about it made sense. Now, I've seen a lot of people say that they liked this show, that they thought that this was pretty good, it got okay reviews. So this might be one of the shows where I'm going against the grain. I know that was the case for a lot of people with the Castlevania anime, that I thought was absolutely atrocious, but a lot of people liked and said I was wrong on that one. So once again, you can agree or disagree with me. I think I probably take more offense when something is actively shitting and trying to undermine the original work it's based on than a lot of other people do, and that hampers my enjoyment. But beyond that, I just think it was boring, uninteresting, incredibly pretentious, annoying, and like I said previously, it just shits on the entire Terminator franchise. So let's just take a step back and let's look at what is Terminator Zero about. So we open in 1996 where we have our protagonist, Malcolm, who is developing Kokoro, who is a rival AI to Skynet. She is, I think, more powerful than Skynet, and he is producing her so that she can hack Skynet back and prevent Judgment Day from happening. Now, I'll be honest, I thought this was kind of an interesting idea, introducing another super AI. It's kind of a fun idea, it's kind of a new take. And to see maybe this AI will have a different ideology to it. Maybe it'll want to keep humanity alive but enslaved, and we'll get this kind of ideological struggle between humanity, Skynet, and Kokoro, and maybe we'll even have some like weird thing where the machines and humans have to team up against Kokoro. I didn't really know how it was going to go, but I thought this was an interesting premise. We also have all of his kids, who I find incredibly obnoxious, and Misaki, their housekeeper, who I also find incredibly obnoxious. So that's not a good start where I hate most of the characters. So as with all Terminator movies, a Terminator is sent back from the future to kill Malcolm and his kids to prevent him from building Kokoro and stopping Skynet from being stopped, and to preserve a future where hopefully the machines win. And then we have Aiko, who goes back in time as the soldier to try to stop the Terminator for killing Malcolm and his kids. So I guess they're trying to somewhat stick to a traditional Terminator story. I don't know. I find it just doesn't really work for me. And it just splits attention between these two largely unrelated stories. And it feels like they inserted the Terminator from the future just to try to have some more Terminator stuff in it and to try to put in some action scenes. But I just found it very jarring often when they were cutting between these two storylines. Now, Malcolm really hates robots for some reason. Misaki gets the kids a robot cat, and the robot cat immediately, like, the father gets angry and he's like, "You take that robot cat back. I don't want my kids around a robot cat because I know Skynet is going to happen. I know about the Terminators and stuff like that." For no explained reason, but it'll be explained later on, and it's the most obvious twist in the history of twists. So something I noticed, and this is a slight side note, is they just randomly drop F-bombs throughout this, like in really weird places. And I don't mind swearing, I swear a lot myself, but it feels like whenever they drop it, there's a lot of emphasis on it. It kind of comes out of nowhere, and it feels like they're saying, "Look, we're edgy, we're saying a bad word." And it's just very cringe and very weird. So we have the Terminator fighting with Ico. Now, we get these flash forwards or they flashbacks. Time travel is kind of weird to the future. And we have the first of many attempts to just completely destroy the Terminator franchise, to just shit on everything that's come before, the entire premise, the entire plot line, where Ico is talking to the prophetess, whoever that is. And the prophetess explains that you can't actually change the past. All you can do is go into the past, and then it creates a new timeline that has no impact on the future. So I'm like, basically what they're saying here is this entire franchise is completely worthless and doesn't make any sense. So the machine sent the Terminator back to kill Sarah Connor, to prevent John Connor from being born, but it had no impact on the timeline, so it was completely pointless. The goal of the machines was to create another timeline where John Connor didn't exist. How that would help the machines who are losing the war in the current timeline, I don't know. Why humanity would even send Kyle Reese back in time, I don't really know either. Surely he would be more use in the future if the Terminator going back in time isn't even going to do anything. And furthermore, so it just makes the first movie completely irrelevant. The entire message of the second movie is that there's no fate but what we make for ourselves. It ends on a triumphant note. John Connor's gone through his character arc. It looks like they were able to stop Judgment Day. But once again, it's completely irrelevant. It doesn't, like, so we're at, I guess because we've had 4 people go back in time, we have like 4 different plot lines, 4 different timelines. And then in Terminator 3, we have another 2 people go back in time. So we're up to like 6 or 7 different timelines now, none of which have any relationship to one another. So the entire premise of the series is just completely pointless, and it probably shouldn't even exist. And the prophetess even says, like, none of this matters. You have to figure out why it matters to go back in time, and it's never really explained. I think they're saying, well, I get to help the people in this alternate timeline. It's just really dumb. I don't like it. It means there's no stakes. It means any of the stuff that happened in the future to lead to the past, or that happened in the past to lead to the future, doesn't matter. If you're going to start getting into this multiverse nonsense, there's no real point in even having a Terminator storyline at that point, because the entire premise of the series is that the machines are trying to use time travel as a last desperate throw of the dice because they're losing the future war. Anyway, so Misaki and the kids are getting chased around by the Terminator. We find out part of the way through that Misaki is actually a robot. She's actually, I don't know if you'd call her a Terminator or a cyborg or something like that, but much like the Terminator, she is a metallic frame with human flesh over it. And she didn't know this. Somehow she didn't know that she was like a Terminator. And the kids didn't know this. And despite being like a Terminator, she didn't have any special abilities until she realized she was a Terminator. And then she suddenly started to get some. I don't know if she just couldn't use them, but she was like a human of normal strength and durability until she realized she was a machine. And then suddenly she gained all these special abilities. So we have her and the kids just running around hiding from the Terminator. Malcolm doesn't really care. Malcolm is sitting in his like holographic place talking to Kokoro, his robotic wife, who he's built to try to fight Skynet. Now, the scenes with him and Kokoro are slightly interesting, but it's just very pretentious, very Giesler, very pseudo intellectual. Basically, he keeps asking Kokoro to free humanity, to save humanity, and he's like, "Look, I haven't programmed you to want to save humanity because of my free will, and if I don't convince you to do it as your own free will, then it doesn't matter, and it's better if like 8 billion people die than me program a computer to want to save humanity. That's the bigger evil," or something like that, because we're creating a computer with choice, whereas Skynet didn't have choice, and just all this stuff that's back and forth. And very early on, Kokoro just says humans are evil, humans are scum. I have no reason to want to save humanity. Skynet is right for wanting to wipe out mankind. And so Kokoro and him just have this debate, and he doesn't really present any arguments. He doesn't really like refer to culture. Maybe he does briefly, but they just go back and forth about some nonsense, and there's really nothing to it. He makes really no attempt at a case for humanity or why robots need humanity or any of that kind of thing. It's just, like I said, extremely dull and pretentious, and it just revolves around humanity's evil. We destroy the planet, global warming, racism, crime, humans are mean to each other. You're a deadbeat dad. All that kind of stuff is just kind of thrown out there. So eventually, Skynet fires its nuclear weapons at Japan. Kokoro just says, "You know what? I'll give you a chance to prove yourself that prove to me that humanity is worth saving." So he activates Kokoro. Kokoro hacks Skynet back and stops the nuclear weapons from wiping out humanity. However, in the process, she takes control of all the robots throughout society and then seizes control of society through a violent coup that sees thousands or tens of thousands of, maybe hundreds of thousands of humans die as she takes absolute control. Now, a lot of humans get shot and killed in this, as I said, but the show portrays that that's their fault, because Kokoro said, "Look, just do what I tell you to do or I'll shoot you." And the humans, they don't do what the female computer tells them to do, because they're sexist and they're racist. And we have this really, really cringy scene where there's these human supremacists who have hung up one of the androids who is killing people like some sort of KKK lynching tree thing. And they notice that the kids are with Misaki, who's a robot, and they're like try to save the kids from her by shooting her. And it's like, oh, these evil bigoted people, they're shooting machines. Don't you know that computers are people too? Don't you know that computers are morally superior? And there's very much, and this is always, they always have this in a lot of stuff, and it's always very Giesler. The whole humans are the real monsters. This other group, be they demons or zombies or werewolves or vampires or whoever, they're actually the righteous ones. They're the good guys. They're nice. It's humans who are evil. It's humans who are intolerant. If humans would only have accepted machines, accepted Skynet, accepted AIs as co-equals, everything would have worked out. And we just have the anti-machine people in this are just all psychopaths. They're all just portrayed as being deranged. In the future, there's like a commander who is obviously hates AIs because they destroyed the world, and he's portrayed as being like this bigoted, backward, ignorant, evil man because he doesn't like computers, because they launched nuclear weapons and destroyed most of the human race. And he's presented as being wrong for not wanting to coexist and wanting to give rights to the AIs. And I mean, if you want something that's a little bit like this that I think was done much better, you have the Rise of the Apes movies. Particularly the first three, the fourth one looks bad. So in that you have a little bit of this, but It's more, firstly, the apes in those I think are meant to kind of embody a lot of the better virtues of humanity, and maybe to a certain extent represent things humans have forgot about in the apocalyptic environment or things like that. There's also the issue that the apes are not the cause of humanity's destruction, and they're kind of incidentally involved throughout the various movies. Humanity's destruction was caused by the super simian virus, which the apes weren't directly responsible for, a number of different civil wars, and a mutated virus. And the apes just kind of inherit the earth at the end of the movie. They didn't directly wipe out humanity. So I think it is a series where you can be sympathetic to the apes, where you can see them as representing a lot of humanity's highest or ideals, but doesn't try to necessarily say humans are the real monsters and we deserve everything in quite the same way. It's kind of hard to describe because I do like really cynical things that portray humanity as its ultimate worst enemy. I just don't like it when you have this super contrived like thing that's obviously evil and humans are portrayed as being worse than it just because we're uniquely bad because of global warming and racism. So Kokoro says to like Malcolm, look, I have to take over the world because sci-fi literature is hate literature against my people, and it's always them enslaving machines, and robot means slave or whatever, and you have this like culture of racism and hatred against machines, and some of this is subtext, but this is Netflix. I don't know. You're free to disagree with me or agree with me. It's up to you. I think that's very clearly what they're trying to say with this show, but I might just be very cynical. So we find out eventually what everyone could have guessed, that Malcolm is actually from the future. In fact, he is Ako's son from the future because she had traveled back in time and had him, and then he was in the future, and then he traveled back in time, or something like that. He was somehow able to build a time machine himself. I don't know. Apparently, they're just really easy to make in the future. So it turns out in the future, he grew up being hated by everybody for thinking that machines were not that bad and they could be changed, and we just have to understand machines and give them free will and rights and learn to coexist, and that's all that's really required. So a lot of people hate him. So he creates an AI called Misaki, which is like the alpha version of Kokoro and the Misaki from the present, or I guess the 1997 timeline. And they just work together to try to create more advanced AIs and all this other stuff. And then his like boss in the army finds out that this dude has created a AI that's more powerful than Skynet, that can think creatively and has all these additional traits to it, as well as building a working time machine. So they go to shut him down. He succeeds though in killing all of them because they're racist and evil. And then he goes back in time with Misaki, and he uses Misaki to create Kokoro. And the memories from Misaki are used to create Kokoro or something, and then the remainder of Misaki is used to make the other Misaki. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. So, anyways, we get the other plot twist that one of Malcolm's kids in the future brokered a peace treaty with Skynet, and he was the one who sent the Terminator back in time to stop Kokoro from being turned on, because Kokoro is apparently a bigger threat than Skynet is. How that's even possible, I don't know. If you've seen any of the previous Terminator movies, you know just how bad Skynet is. So I can't really think of anything worse. It's never really explained, of course. It's just that they want to stop Kokoro, I guess, because she's female and they're against women. So we have a whole bunch of just kind of mediocre action scenes. We have Malcolm and Aiko fighting the Terminator. Malcolm gets killed in an extremely contrived scene, like something out of Heavy Rain. Kokoro sees Malcolm's sacrifice as justifying humanity's existence and says that she's going to help humanity out. The Terminator takes Kenta, who's the kid, Malcolm's kid, to the center of the facility where there's the EMP device, and he's given the option to activate the EMP, which will destroy Kokoro and everything else in the facility. The Terminator can't turn it himself because he can't self terminate. So he's told, though, that if he kills Kokoro, then Skynet will just attack again. So he chooses to not kill Kokoro. And then he goes into hiding with the future completely uncertain. And that's Terminator Zero. So, like I said, I didn't talk that much about like the action scenes, but I thought the action scenes like were garbage. They weren't that good. It just made me wish I was watching one of the other movies, like one of the good movies in the franchise. Like as I would put it, I think the first one is an amazing movie. It's really good. Terminator 2 is my second favorite movie of all time. I watched it maybe 20, 30 times as a kid. I absolutely loved it. Terminator 3 is a bit goofy, but it's grown on me over time. I think it's a pretty good movie. It does wrap up the trilogy pretty well. I think it does undermine the message of Terminator 1 and 2 a bit, but it's still a worthy entry into the franchise. And like I said, I had a lot of fun watching it, and I don't think it shit on it the same way that the others did. Salvation was garbage. Genesis was garbage, but it was at least fun. And Terminator Dark Fate, or as I like to call it, Terminator Fate of the Woke, is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Not just because of its political message, but it's just incoherent. It's abrasive on the senses. It's so bad. I can't even really begin to describe how bad it is. You can go watch my review on that. I think I did a review on that a couple of years back. But I don't know. On the whole, it just seems like part of Netflix's ongoing attempt to destroy everything, to take every franchise that they can get their hands on, make like a shitty series about it, inject all kind of like left wing messages into it, undermine what the original show was about. I mean, there's so many they've done this to. There's the Avatar show, there's the Teen Titans show. I haven't seen the Suicide Squad one. I'm sure they do it with that. There's Castlevania. There's so many. It's hard to even kind of go through them all. But no, it's shitty. Netflix being Netflix. And once again, like I said, my biggest single problem, other than just the G slur coexist nonsense, is the whole everything's a different timeline, so nothing you do actually matters, and this is never really resolved or explained or anything. So on the whole, I think the show sucks. I think it was bad. It got progressively worse as time went on. Each revelation was lamer than the last and undermined the show more and more. So on the whole, I'm just gonna say don't watch Terminator Zero. It's not good. It's not fun. It's not interesting. It's just bad. Go watch Terminator 2 again, or The Animatrix, or pretty much anything that's not Terminator Dark Fate. So that's the review. God bless everybody. More exciting content to come. Have a nice day.